Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Tobega Hadebe of BMF Santon, heading up the Education and Development Portfolio. BMF Santon would like to welcome you to this Excellence in Leadership event, in which we'll be discussing the kind of leadership BMF needs, as well as an in-depth with Tasneem Fredericks and Nicholas Maweni in discussing their journeys in leadership and the kind of leadership that BMF needs. The agenda of this evening is I'll be introducing the speakers. We will then, I'll hand over to Dr. President Gananda, who will be having a conversation with Tasneem and Nicholas. Please do pop in your questions where you have questions for the panelists, and then we'll read those questions out and have the panelists answer them, and then we'll close the event. It is my privilege to introduce our facilitator and panelists. Our facilitator this evening is Dr. President Gananda. Dr. President is a motivational speaker, author, and holds a doctorate of philosophy in social work for her contribution to efforts to eliminate the plight of those living with HIV/AIDS and the struggle against gender-based violence and the abuse of human rights in South Africa. She is a leader in every right and owns her consultancy and talk service called Positive Talk Services, focusing on a range of services, including personal financial management and self-development and growth. She is a seasoned broadcaster and facilitator, and we are honored to have her host this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. President Gananda.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tobega.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
First panelist I'd like to introduce for this evening is Tasneem Fredericks. Tasneem is the current National Deputy President of BMF and is the national head of the Gender Desk for BMF. She has practiced law for over 16 years and is a director of the law firm Fredericks Incorporated. She has spoken on both radio and television on the Annual Commission on Employment Equity Report, other transformation issues, and has made input on various positions to advance BEE in the country and to contribute to the national conversation. She holds an LLB degree, a certificate in Director Development and Corporate Governance through the Institute of the Directors and Department of Trade and Industry. She has an extensive experience on compliance issues relating to the Companies Act and corporate law negotiation. During her tenure as the BMF Company Secretary during the periods of 2012 and 2016, she provided direction to the board on all its legal and compliance issues. She is passionate about Black economic transformation and sat on the Labor Relations Task Team that formed the part of the business component that was working together with government towards implementation of National Development Plan. The main purpose of the task team was to formulate joint strategies to the economic and labor challenges facing South Africa. She also formed part of a team for the BMF who presented to Parliament on the national minimum wage. She is a non-executive director, as well as a chair of Social and Ethics Committee at CompuShare South Africa, as well as a national executive member of the Black Conveyancers Association. She regularly championed for the rights of her constituency for work allocation from the commercial banks for wholly owned Black conveyancing law firms. She was a member of the Communal Land Tenure Working Group Committee, who made submissions to the Minister on the Green Paper to Land Reform. She serves as a trustee of the South End Museum, where she worked on the memorization of the forced removals in the area. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you an impressive, driven, committed, and integrous leader, Ms. Tasneem Fredericks.
Hi, Tobeka. Thank you for that very warm welcome, and also greetings to the members and the audience and to our facilitator, Dr. President Gananda. Thank you so much for agreeing to facilitate us this evening. Thank you.
Second panelist I'd like to introduce this evening is Nicholas Maweni. Nicholas is an active member of BMF in good standing, a former chairperson of BMF Port Elizabeth in the late 1990s. He has a deep understanding of BMF's mandate and is a founding member of BMF Santon. He has worked in the marketing, communications, and sponsorship for over 18 years as a seasoned executive. He was the marketing director for SAP Africa and been on with companies such as Vodacom, and was a member of the executive leadership team that started Virgin Mobile in South Africa. Mr. Maweni took a break from corporate life when he was vice president for marketing and corporate affairs at IBM and came to serve the BMF as the managing director. He has an illustrious career in marketing, and we benefited from this as BMF members when he made sure that corporate South Africa was always supporting and sponsoring the BMF events and programs during the heydays of President Mani and President Mohale, who would never ever forget the clear value proposition that members had during that era. Mr. Maweni is a human rights activist, the chairperson of Amnesty International South Africa, the independent chairperson of SAMRO, the chairperson of Valued Citizens Initiative, council member and Central University of Technology, executive chairman, BRICS Fashion Week, to mention but a few. He is the chair of chairs. He has extensive experience in both private and public sector, having served as chief of staff for Ministry of Arts and Culture and Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Development. He has masters in strategic marketing and masters of law and is currently studying a doctorate in law. He is highly decorated by the Institute of Marketing Management and was awarded Citizen of the Year by the City of Port Elizabeth in 1999. Our very own BMF also awarded him the Manager of the Year in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a strong, experienced, trusted ethical leader with integrity, Mr. Nicholas Maweni.
Thank you very much, Thobeka, and also good evening to Dr. Griselda Kananda, and also to the Deputy President of the BMF, Mayor Tasneem, and also to all the members who are joining us this evening. Thank you.
I now hand over to you, Griselda.
Thank you, Thobeka. It truly is a humbling honor for me to facilitate this conversation this evening. And I'm glad that I was not introduced as a preacher. So I'm going to be doing less talk and allow the people who are going to convince us on what exactly, what kind of leadership is a Black Management Forum looking for? And if perhaps these two individuals may be our future as we talk about the next chapter to Black Management Forum. Thank you for the opportunity to facilitate this conversation. As we say, excellence in leadership, the kind of leadership that Black Management Forum is looking for. And we draw and stand on the shoulders of giants, Datu Eric Mafuna, Don Nube, George Negota, Don Mkwanazi, Wiseman Gutlu, Lawton Ndlovu, the list goes on, and sadly, one rose amongst those thorns, and that is Usisnolita Fakude. And hopefully this indeed does change as we channel and chart a way forward in celebrating 45 years of driving ethical leadership and meaningful transformation. Is it still on course? And we are going to be taking your questions a little bit later. And my script dictates that I start after that amazing introduction. I start with just getting to know you two as leaders. How do you define your leadership style? And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I'm going to start with ladies first, as they say. Tasneem, if you can just start off by just introducing to us how you see leadership within Black Management Forum penning out, and what do you define as excellence in leadership in your view?
Thanks so much, Doc. I think for me, always, when I listen to how I've been described as kind and as generous as it is, I think for me, I need to mention that a personal achievement that's never quite on my CV is the fact that I am a single mother to a beautiful teenage daughter who possibly should be given an honorary membership, because she's been hearing about BMF since she was in my womb. So I think it's, it's this issue of this Black consciousness, and I often speak about the Black manager versus the BMF manager. Okay, and there's a big difference between the two. And when I use this analogy, I'm answering you directly. I'm saying to you what leadership encapsulates. Because a lot of times, as the BMF board, we've seen and it's sad, a regression, a kind of reversal in transformation. And of course, as BMF, we shout and we scream and we say, this is not right, this is not on. We want to meet the board of, let's say, African Bank, or we want to meet the board of, let's say, a parastatal like Mango or Eskom. And what happens is that these big companies are sending Black managers. So we're not fighting a known enemy. We are not fighting people who don't look like us. We are not fighting people that don't sound like us. They don't speak the same language as us. So it becomes a bit insidious because you don't know what you're dealing with. And I think therein lies the issue of what is excellence in leadership. Are you going to be a Black manager, or are you going to be a BMF manager? And if you are a BMF manager, you would have been inducted into the BMF DNA. You would know what it means to be a BMF manager, and you would know what role you will be playing in your conversation with other BMF managers and with the BMF board and with society at large. So for me, the issue of, what is excellence in motion? How do we make an intangible tangible? And for me, it's really going back to basics. How are we going to be empowering our members on a branch level so that when they get to the board, we've already inducted them, they've already got that BMF DNA, they already know what it is to be a BMF manager, okay? They already have been through a series of directorship trainings, issues of governance, ethics, transparency, everything that makes up what the BMF is about when we look at the logo. So for me, it's going back to basics. It's asking ourselves, how do we execute the mandate? I use the book by Lot and Lovu, Lot Speaks, the BMF and I, as a manual. Because we've got an MOI, right? And it's like any other MOI of any other membership organization. It speaks to issues of code of conduct, it speaks to issues of how you elect people, it speaks to issues of, when your membership starts, when it terminates. But for me, the BMF and I, the book by Lot Speaks talks about where we come from, how we responded to this issue of leadership, and what is the relevance of BMF then versus the relevance of BMF now. What is the type of BMF manager then versus what is the type of BMF manager that we need to be now, bearing in mind that we've been overtaken with technology, we've been overtaken by COVID, we've been taken over by a lot of things that are no longer what was in existence, when BMF was formed in April of 1976, and why it was formed then. And this journey through democracy, how we then emphasize the leadership that is required so that we influence society, we influence government, we influence the private sector, white corporates. That was part of what inclusivity, when Lot speaks in his book about partnering with white business on key and national issues, he's saying they are the majority, the economic majority. We can't be an island. We can't dismiss them and, shout from the periphery. We've got to eat this beast from the belly. So I don't want to monopolize too much time. That to me, I don't know, in a long way is answering your question, I hope.
No. I'm happy that you took that time to just, code this BNA, the BMF manager, that there are managers and there's a BMF manager. There are directors and there's a BMF director. And then you wonder, why do we have almost 47% of unemployment in South Africa? Yet we have these individuals that have been given skills, that have been given a mandate to fulfill, and that mandate is to simply thin the inequalities in our country. And it's just unfortunate that we only given an hour to just unpack all this, 45 minutes that is, to unpack all this, but there's just so much to talk about. And Nicholas, you know, as a chair who's chaired and still chairs in so many spaces, why would we have this incredible machinery, Black Management Forum, which stands for Black excellence, and yet we still speak of issues of unemployment? Where are we missing the link? What is missing for us to connect the dots that we see this Black excellence? I mean, Tasneem talks about this manager who has been given skills, who has been given, you know, insight on what Black excellence is about, and yet they get there when you are demanding to speak to a corporation that violates labor laws. You come across Black managers, Black leaders. What are we missing? You need to unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Thanks very much. Even after being at this since 2010 in terms of technology, I guess it still shows us some flames. Maybe to start on this very good point, to carry on it where Tasneem has left it, in terms of excellence in leadership and maybe what went wrong on this one, and then moving on and the kind of leadership BMF needs. I guess often we tend to forget certain things such as the values of the organization. And Tasneem speaks about, you know, our former president, late former president, Lord Speaks in his book. We have somehow in certain cases abandoned those values, because it is those values that will certainly shape the character that we are as individual members. Now, when you understand those values and you've got the base and strong values, and then added to that and you have a good character, you understand your character, and it is formed, it becomes so much easier to become a very good leader. And for example, I tend to describe that I find myself, I'm a leader, you know, the one that knows the way and goes the way, and to some extent and most times shows the way. And I think it was John Maxwell who once shared such a similar statement. And I guess when you understand that, hey, we have a duty, and our duty is not just is not even a fiduciary duty or a duty of care. We have an ethical duty. We have a social duty. When you define yourself as a leader, you have a social duty. People need to look up to you. You better show them the way. You better show them the right way. Now, it's very difficult to show people the right way when you don't have the right character, the right principles, founded with the right values. And that is often the biggest challenge. Because when you have those kind of things that I've mentioned, you know, Dr. Kananda, it becomes much easier for you to understand why BMF was formed, to understand that many people will ask this question after 45 years, do you still need an organization such as a BMF? Now, this couple of weeks has been an interesting one. We saw a couple of interesting court cases. I mean, the tourism case, we saw the mining charter, to mention but the few. And the question is, how do we respond to those as leaders and as Black managers, and make sure that we really go back to our basics and make sure we move this conversation forward?
And I guess this moves us straight to the next question, that why would I choose Black Management Forum, Tasneem? I mean, I come from a generation, I remember the years of the many former leaders of Black Management Forum. I was once a member of Black Management Forum, and for me, I look at it today, it's all about tenders and the infightings, no different from some of the political parties in our country. And I shudder to ask, how do we go back to the mandate that you were talking about earlier on, where our core purpose, our core existence is about channeling and producing Black excellence and Black leaders who take pride in wanting to bring about change. I mean, one of the pillars of Black Management Forum is youth and women empowerment. The current unemployment rate is 46.3%, almost 47%. And this is only the official rate. And I ask myself, looking at, I mean, the many leaders that have come before you, that to date, if one of your pillars is about empowering women and youth, and in leadership, we only had one female president. What needs to give? And the question then becomes the relevance of the Black Management Forum today. Why should I be a member?
Sorry, I was on mute. You know, I've been asked this question very often, many times on radio, and I've always flipped the question. I've said, well, you know, I'm always asked, why should we belong to BMF? But and it speaks to the relevance. Are we relevant still? Okay. And also, where would we, so if there was no BMF, then, you know, would we be in a better or worse position? And I think that with the reversals that have been made just in the last week, it was a depressing week for the nation. If nobody felt, you know, if they went to bed with a light heart, then there's an issue with you, because transformation is an emotional, it is an emotional thing. It's an emotional issue in this country. And I think that for me, BMF is a broader church. Okay, but it also speaks to growing a strong Black middle class. And you know, and now often we must be honest, because Lott says this in his book. He says that the Black Management Forum is a Black elitist organization. And why is it elitist, Dr. Kananda? It's exactly because I'm sitting here calling you Dr. Kananda. I'm sitting here with a law degree. We've got Nick busy doing his PhD in law. We elitist in the sense that we are highly educated. And because we are highly educated, we occupy important spaces across parastatals, corporate governance, even in our own businesses. Okay, so we are contributing to the tax in this country. I mean, there's no way that, you know, people can't say that the Black, if you don't have a Black, imagine now if we did not have the strong Black middle class. I mean, it's not even strong anymore, because you mentioned unemployment at 44, 47%. And then the scary thing is 50% of that 44 to 47% is occupied by what should be economically active people between the ages of 18 and 35. I mean, if you told me that there were people unemployed from 52 to 60, I wouldn't be as concerned as I am when you say that 50% of that huge, massive unemployment rate is occupied by young, working, able bodies. It's worrisome. So why is the BMF important? It's important because, you know, like I said, this, and you know, the unfortunate thing is I read Lott's book. You know, it mentions what the BMF mandate is. Why do you want to be a member, Dr. Kananda? There are networking opportunities, advocacy. We've made input into a number of legislation. He speaks about partnering with white business. We haven't done that so well because we broke away with BUSA. From BUSA in 2012, I was part of that. And I think that we should relook at that relationship, not specifically now, but at some point we need to look back at how are we going to be included in this, you know, in this conversation, because it doesn't help us to be standing on corners screaming and waving placards about racism in corporate South Africa, while the very people that we want to see us are facing in another direction in a building 3 streets away. You speak about programs. So we've got an SMME desk, we've got a litigation fund, we've got a policy and research subcommittee, we've got a woman empowerment desk. In 2018, when the presidency came in, and I think, sometimes this is an issue because there's no continuity and succession planning. Each presidency comes in with their own kind of vision, of mission, of strategy. And one of the strategies that I was quite strong on was to say, we have this gender desk, but the issue of triple oppression in this country can no longer be ignored, through which we run specific programs to address, the fact that we have this unequal this gender gap internationally. I mean, 102 years is a hell of a lot of years to catch up, to close this gender gap. But in South Africa specifically, we live in a very violent society where women, Dr. Kananda, we have to think long and hard if we even want to go to the post office during the day. Broad day, if we go in, are we going to come out alive? These are issues that occupy our minds. We need to now, in the morning, is this skirt too short? It's going to be my fault if I get raped. I'm sure when a man wears a shorty, he doesn't have to think thrice about, what occupies him probably is that, it's a clean shorts, that his wife has washed it. Not that it's too short, or, women are going to start whistling at him as he walks down the road. So we live in a very violent society where women get raped. I mean, the empirical evidence on that is like per second. It's just scary. It's shocking. It's gross. It's just unacceptable. But we live in this society. So one of the strategies that we set as Women Empowerment Desk, as women in the BMF, was that we want a woman empowerment desk, and we want to take women through and I mean, Duke and BMF has had a long-standing relationship, and it was easy to continue that relationship with the president of Duke, Shamla Chetty, to say to her during COVID, let's not cancel this Women Empower program. Actually, it's been to our benefit, because where before we only had 20 women, we now took on about 45 to 50 women because it was online. We got Vodacom to sponsor the data. So we had women joining from all over the country going through this program called BMF Duke Women in Power. So that's just one of the programs that we've done as BMF, specifically geared towards women. And I think that
Tasneem, maybe to just rephrase this question. Let's respond to a question that is answered, is asked by Olwetu Mdudi, who says, what type of character does a Black manager, or should a Black manager have? Do we have the right people to lead corporate South Africa? People with humility, fairness, and fortitude. And I go back once again, what has taken BMF so long to have a female president? Why do we only have Nolita Fagude as former female president? I mean, what should give?
Yeah, I'm gonna hand over to Nick, but I want to answer that question specifically to say that BMF is a membership-based organization. I am running for president this year. So I'm saying that I served under 4 presidents so far. So I served under President Maweni, President Mohale, shortly with President Mthunzi, but I also served with him on the board for 3 years, and then President Nomlala. So the continuity, the succession, the vision, the strategy, I've been there. Nick and I will speak about when BMF was issuing cards. Why have we waited so long? The members must reflect on that question, Dr. Kananda. I can't answer. When we live in a patriarchal society, why men choose men over women. I certainly hope that this membership of this voting year is going to think long and hard on what they want for a better South Africa, not just for a better BMF.
Are you ready to serve?
I'm ready. I was born ready.
That's it.
Yeah.
I love a confident woman.
Yeah.
Now,
Dr. Kananda, the other one, just to add on to this issue that you've raised, maybe there's 2 ones. The character.
Yeah.
Remember, BMF is here to develop managerial leadership, yeah, and we're here to do that. And people join because they really want to be developed, because that's how BMF does. And also people join because they want to have an impact in society, a positive social impact, because of the work that BMF does in terms of thought leadership, in terms of the transformation agenda that is at the helm of BMF. And maybe to deal with this question of a female women presidency within the BMF, it's an interesting one, but it's an interesting, probably not for BMF anymore. I think we have dealt with it. BMF dealt with this question probably round about in 2018. And it was resolved that the next president should be a woman. And I think members of BMF reflected on this issue. And they asked the questions whether, why should we only talk about, Umama Unolita, Susnolita as the only female president in the BMF. And when we talk about these issues of transformation, and that was it. And then every year, even last year, in fact, even the recent AGM we had, this issue was again reaffirmed. And I was also very pleased that the president of the BMF also put his weight around this matter, I think when even he was hosting the president of the Republic, to really make it very clear to those who think it's not clear that BMF has spoken. And BMF said it wants to have a female president. We are very clear about that. And the second thing about this one is it the right thing to do? It's beyond that. It's more than about the right thing. At times, we must walk the talk. We at BMF often, we scream, we shout at the top of our voices and ask for companies to do transformation. We've now finally realized that we want to self-reflect and make sure that we really do the same. Somebody asked this question about the character. As we developed leadership, it's very important that you developed character. It's important to develop the character. We often talk about, people raise this issue about corruption at times, as the biggest challenge to our, constitutional democracy as a big thing. I sometimes think, is it really, a corruption issue, or is it really the biggest issue which you alluded to? It's just more about people having the right characters. When you have the right characters, it's amazing. You know what to do. You will have integrity. You'll have honesty, and all the right things will follow.
So the question I wanted to ask you, as you were adding on to what Tasneem has already mentioned, is that the foundation of the Black Management Forum is traced back in 1976, when a group of young men at the time came together to form a support group to change what they viewed as the challenges for corporate South Africa. And I look back now, thinking of the names that I mentioned earlier on, Otatu Eric Mafuna or Lothu Ndlovu, do you believe that looking at Black Management Forum now, are they happy?
Are they happy? We refer to them as the stalwarts within the BMF. And are they happy? We've got a space for them. At times you need counsel from those wise men and women. And we always, as an organization, go back and ask for them, especially when the organization now and then veers off the rail tracks. You do need to go back to the founders and the likes of Babu Eric Mafuna and all the other members of former presidents of the BMF, especially those who are still alive, and ask them, hey, is the organization on the right track? I guess the biggest challenge from them that I've heard from many of them, they actually say, we've had our time. It is now your time. The other good thing, Griselda, about the BMF is it does allow you to make mistakes. We are not very harsh. We can't be harsh. It's an organization for learning and development. So if you come into BMF and you really cause a blunder, It's unlike in a corporate environment where you'll be stoned to death. We do rally around and make sure that we dust you and pick you up and give you the right manual and make sure that let's learn from this mistake, because after all, we are for the development of leadership.
Awesome. Now, as we chant way forward and look to a future with Black Management Forum, a future that is brighter and is led by Excellence Tasneem. We're looking at huge job losses that came from lockdowns, COVID lockdowns. We're looking at so many challenges that are facing Black businesses, especially SMMEs. Looking to all these challenges, what sort of role will Black Management Forum play in strengthening and ensuring that we minimize the inequalities in our country, we minimize unemployment, in actual fact, just eradicate it, and we improve education in our country? I love the fact that one of the principles for Black Management Forum is skilling managers, that as you take on those positions, you have the right kinds of skills and you fit for purpose. And also just the process of doing business in South Africa is expensive. So what role and what sort of collaborations is Black Management Forum going to get engaged in forging a way that will enable Black managers and businesses to thrive in our country?
Should I try and have a stab at this one, Griselda, and then hand over to Matt Tasneem? So, Griselda, you must always remember, as you would know, as a former member of BMF, that BMF has always been at the helm of changing policy and even influencing legislation. We know we come from the days when BMF used to really drive, as you know, the Affirmative Action Blueprint of 1983. We talk about how BMF was even given a seat at NEDLAC to make sure that we craft the Employment Equity Act. We know about our 1997, where the BMF was very clear and unequivocal when it comes to the Black Economic Empowerment Commission that was formed as a result of the BMF. So we've always been at the helm of this. And also we know that BMF understand that we don't operate in isolation or in a vacuum. We operate within the society. We operate within this country that is going through this change. One of the things that you've already alluded to in terms of the unemployment rate that is relatively high, inequality, is that we have been very quiet. Now, the Minister of Tourism was challenged about something similar to this. What the Minister was trying to do in her way, and I don't want us to probably even have a discussion about the decision of the court, because they have the right to make that ruling. But I guess in her way, she was trying to implement the policy that BMF gave birth to. She was trying to address this issue of the imbalances of the past, to address this issue of inequality that we have in our society. That's what to some extent the minister was trying to do. Same thing in terms of once empowered, always empowered issue that was also tackled in terms of the mining as well. So back to this thing in terms of what are the things that BMF should focus on. Again, let's go back, developing managerial leadership. 2 is then to develop the thought leadership and advocacy of BMF. We are being drowned by Omafiki Zolo, new organizations that only emerged 10, 15, 20 years ago. And they are doing far better, because at times as Black organizations, as Black people, as Black leaders, we are not well coordinated. And maybe that's another call for us to work and collaborate with all the other stakeholders. I think Umete's name has alluded that maybe let's go back and revisit the Busa. If they are better now, and maybe we need to relook and visit the Busa engagement. And of course, as we do this, we always remember that we're advancing the socioeconomic transformation of the BMF. And Tasneem, is there anything else you want to add on that one?
Yeah, I think to me, it's to say to the members and to the audience and to everybody listening, is there's not going to be a silver bullet solution. There's no way that between Nicholas and myself, we're going to give an ideal answer. In a country where, we are not seeing, and, the advantage was this intersection between being issue. I just want to say it's many more decades, but we need to be deliberate. We need to have if we're going to keep changing that plan every 3 years, then the plan is eventually, it's not a roadmap that's going to lead to a definitive destination.
Tasneem, we keep losing you. I'm going to suggest that perhaps you close off your video so that you strengthen your connectivity.
Is that better?
It's much better, yes, for now.
Stuff. So what I wanted to say is that there's no silver bullet, but I want to emphasize what Nicholas has said. We undervalue the brand value of BMF. So whenever there's big issues that are happening in the country, the first people, the media, they're contacting BMF. They want a BMF view. They want a BMF opinion. They want a BMF analysis on the situation. So there already we know. I mean, when we hosted the president a few months ago, he pleaded to us as Black Management Forum, and he said, the managers in this room, the Blacks in corporates, please do something about transformation. I agree with Nick that the minister, was trying to implement, and that we live in a very anti-Black country. It's actually quite hideous and absurd that we have legislation that protects the majority. That nowhere else in the world is that true. Affirmative action in America is for the minorities. It's for the African American, Latin American, Native American. It's not for the majority who are white. And in South Africa, we've got legislation promoting and advancing the demographic majority in this country, and yet it still fails us. So we have the president of the country making an announcement in 2019 saying that 40% of procurement from government is going to go to women. We then last week get a letter from the chief, or rather from Treasury, writing to the chief procurement officer saying, how do we empower this pledge made by the president of 40%? And the answer from the chief procurement officer is, it's impossible. We can't do that. It's against the Constitution. Now, what we then need to do is fix this legislation that doesn't favor us. We need to go back to government who see us as a partner, a legitimate, credible partner, and we need to revisit these laws and we need to set them straight. We all know it's going to take another 3 years for the employment, is it the procurement bill to come into effect, or 2 years. Already in that letter that the chief procurement officer writes back to Treasury, she says, the procurement bill is too far down the line. And I'm saying, no, we're not accepting that. BMF will go back to government as a stakeholder, as a partner, and we're going to be engaging on those issues. You see, Dr. Kananda, the other thing is we don't have to operate within the parameters of the law if we create an environment where people see transformation as value add, as a reciprocal thing that, apart from it being the right moral thing to do, it also means it's going to increase the bottom line. It's going to make workers more productive. It's going to increase dividends and profits. It is possible. It's not mutually exclusive. So I think it's a whole shift in mindset, and it's definitely going to mean that we, maybe talk less and do more.
Yeah. Talking about talking less and doing more, let me stop asking questions and just go back to the audience and take some of the questions that are asked on the Q&A box. Sakumzi Ngwevela says, what value position do leaders plan to create to ensure relevance, given the fact that, we're celebrating 45 years of the founding statement. So how are we going to create relevance today, acknowledging the fact that challenges today are different from challenges that were 45 years ago? And maybe I can take Sibongile Vilakazi's question as well, that please tell us about yourselves and your leadership development journey. How and where did it develop? I was hoping that the introduction took care of that, but maybe you can just briefly tell us about lessons learned in your leadership journey.
So I'll have a quick stab at this one, Griselda. And maybe let's start with the one about the value proposition that the member asked. At times, we don't need to reinvent the wheel because this issue has been dealt with and it was there. I don't want to be too overly nostalgic because there was a beautiful value proposition that many people remember that was there at the BMF. And members were developed. I remember when the 2008 Companies Act came, members of the BMF were trained on that Companies Act, either via the top 50 structure that we have, and also various, it was cascaded to the different branches within the BMF. Also, we used to partner with learning institutions to make sure that, again, this thing that we said we want to do, developing managerial leaders, we do it. Either we used to partner with the likes of the Institute of Directors, the IOD, and as well as we had a program that was done with the likes of Harvard. We also used to focus on issues of lifestyle. I don't want to underplay this part. There are many relationships that one can forge. There are many relationships that one could really have. Business relationship. You could find tender partners within the BMF, and which is why at some stage we even looked at BMF and says, you know, it's no longer just about focusing on the corporate. Let's also create an SME or SME category within the BMF, because we picked up that there were a number of members within the BMF who asked for that. So these are some of the certain things that already have been there, and especially on these lifestyle programs. That we had a card. I think that that Tasneem was already alluding to. We used to have a card, and you could go to hotels with this. That was just the basic value proposition of BMF. Yes, you used to meet nice friends as well. I know there's a question that you've said, Dr. Vilakazi asked in terms of our leaderships and what has formed us.
Yeah,
I believe my life with BMF dates back. Probably, I don't want to give my age away, it dates back to more than 23, 24 years ago, when I chaired the branch in Port Elizabeth, now known as Ngqeberha. And I was surrounded by a number of, as young as I was surrounded by a number of senior elders in the Eastern Cape. They allowed me that opportunity. They trusted me. They knew I was going to have blunders, but they just said, this is BMF, and it's okay for you to make mistake. We are here to guide you. That was part of my journey. Even when I moved, as I said, let's say coming into Gauteng, even with the then leadership that I found within Gauteng, by the way, at some stage I was the longest serving member within Gauteng province. Even within Gauteng province, and also with the national leadership, within the BMF, they allowed us to say, go and explore. We know you've got certain strengths. You know we've got certain skills, which is why it was easier for us to form a branch within Sandton that is hosting this event today. And because the leaders then could identify certain strengths within all of us. Not all of us are marketers. Not all of us are going to be legal professionals. So the good thing is, the leaders then could see and say, this is your strength, this is what we believe you could do. And that's worked very, very well for my journey until now. And as I continue to chair some of the boards, I'm always cognizant of the issue. You must give an opportunity to the other person because they also need an opportunity to lead.
As Tasneem responds, I would like to just burst your bubble that you jumped ship and you went to Sandton Ukaiser Khoza says there's no 5G in Gqeberha.
I guess he's referring to Tasneem because she's currently in Gqeberha, but I guess issues of technology are always surprising to all of us. So yeah.
Yeah. Tasneem, your response? And maybe as you respond, I mean, quite a number of, there are more questions. Maybe let me let you respond and then we'll go on to the group chat as well.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of the value proposition, Griselda, I think that the impact that BMF has had over 45 years is evidence of the value that a member can derive from the BMF. I think that, you know, if you, it's an awakening of a Black consciousness that is immeasurable and almost priceless to be. And let me just say this because it's the honest truth. And board is the first board that many Black managers have served on. Can you imagine that? And that's the honest truth. So if it were not for the BMF, I mean, this is an environment okay, it's a
Tasneem,
Dr.
it's so unfortunate that we keep losing your connectivity. And
I'm sorry about
maybe as you find a better spot, let me just acknowledge more of these questions and comments. Nkululeko Zondo saying, join rain. We're laughing 5G in Gqeberha this Friday. Will they launching 5G in Gqeberha this Friday? Siyaqhuba leadership. So yeah, for those who have questions, already there are responses from the membership. Malebu Lesejane says, what are the numbers saying in terms of male versus female membership? Does the organization have enough women taking up space, or it's just a wishful thinking? Could that possibly be why there's only been one president to date? I know for a fact that BMF has a lot of female leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
what is the problem?
Yeah, look, I don't want to get emotional about this issue because I mean, every time it gets raised, I want to get violent because it's not for lack of it's not for lack of strong Black women leaders, definitely not.
Yeah.
I've personally served with the likes of Mekuku, I mean, look at Busi Mavuso. Busi is now the CEO of BLSA. We've got many success stories outside women presidents. So people mustn't start that issue. You know, it's a matter of switching your mind into a really a kind of, I don't know what to call it. But we must see it from branch to provincial level, and just on the issue of there are more male members in the BMF than female. So that could be one of the reasons why we don't succeed, but we can't blame that. We need to deliberately and consciously make an effort. The point that I was making before I cut out, Kaza, thank you for pointing out the 5G issues. We'll speak to Vodacom about putting a 5G tower in Gqeberha. So I was saying that the first board that many BMF members sit on is the BMF board. You know, so the first time that they serve is on a BMF board, and that in itself is such a huge, massive value add. And this doesn't happen by accident, by the way. You'll hear from Nick. You know, he served in my region many years ago. We didn't have a BMF student chapter at the then University of Port Elizabeth. Otherwise, I would have joined. I belong to Amnesty International. I grew up during apartheid. I'm not scared to say how old I am, Nick. I'm quite proud because people often say I look younger than I look younger than I am. So I think to me, it's BMF are for those who want it and not those who need it, because those who want it know that it's a life of service. Those who want it know that they're going to have to take out of their own back pockets. They know that it's going to be a huge sacrifice on their personal time, on their personal careers. I mean, I can't Nick, the only reason why you probably at your PhD is because you almost took a gap year from serving on a national level. So these are the sacrifices that we make. It's certainly not a self-serving organization, because if you're going to be self-serving, it's not going to last long. So we start, I mean, I started off serving as branch, as a normal member first, and then into branch, served many years with provincial, served many years on the board. Nicholas, I mean, I can definitely tell him, he'll remember when we did the racism pledge for corporate. He'll remember when we did the MRI in fact, before we converted into a company, we had a little constitution book. Nick, I don't know if you still have yours. I've still got mine. The infinity rewards that we had linked to, there we go, thank you. The infinity rewards that was linked to our cards. We had very, very many partnerships. And because, I mean, we had Mercedes-Benz launch at every corporate update dinner, gala dinner, Mercedes-Benz who launched their latest model Mercedes-Benz with like a whole firework display. So we know where BMF comes from. We know where BMF should be, and we certainly are able to take BMF to where we know it can be as an organization.
Right. Let me take this comment by Pule Johannes Mofokeng, who says, I really think BMF must first assess its basic mandate and reflect on its own image fragmentation, which has resulted in not being as effective as it once was. Subsequently, its policies need to evolve in order to stay up with the current industry trends, amongst necessary changes that are needed. Lately, the organization is poorly performing on fundamental policy issues ranging from necessary leadership redress that exists in almost all strategic sectors. In my humble opinion, there should be less talk and more action. And I guess it's a point that you mentioned earlier on, Tasneem. Sakumzi is helping us to acknowledge some important people that have joined. We acknowledge in our presence the KZN Provincial Chairperson, Glenda Pemral, SA2 Mangojwa, BMF board member, Kaiser Koza, who's already started the conversation with 5G, former BMF Free State Chair, and BMF Cape Town branch, Loyiso Nwemla, and Johannesburg Chair, Lisweni, and Midrand Chair, Puti. And thank you so much to all those who have joined in the conversations. And I encourage you to ask the leaders some personal questions as well. Let it not just be about leadership, because, characteristics of an individual, and I'm glad that Tasneem started the conversation by mentioning that I am first and foremost a mom before I become a leader. And my children know that I'm equally married to BMF. And if you can ask personal questions as well. I know that Nicholas will always reflect on, I don't want to give away my age, and he forever looks 25. So I don't know what he's talking about. So yeah, please do ask them personal questions as well. Dr. Eugene Gula wants to know, is the leadership ready to consider a succession plan that includes media exposure for other leaders?
So Dr. Griselda, let me deal with two questions. Let's start maybe with the one from Dr. Eugenia. She certainly is one of the active member in Sandton as well, and a specialist on governance in particular. And this issue, especially when we talk about a women leadership within the organization. Now here we have the deputy president of the BMF. Now, a proper succession planning dictates that at least she's had 3 years to learn the ropes and to understand. And it is then for that reason that I guess even here, with everybody else, believe that she is now ready to lead the organization. Because when you have a proper good succession planning, that's how it should be. If you haven't got the proper succession planning, then you'll have some jigga stories, on this one. But luckily, within BMF, My understanding is there's clarity on these issues. Because if there's no clarity, then I guess the rest of the country will start to judge us because we don't practice what we preach. And I guess also this thing sometimes of hovering the media. You know, I believe that there's an organization called BMF, and under BMF, there are many capable leaders. There are many capable leaders, and at times, we must give them an opportunity. We can't be experts on everything. Let's allow those members who are subject matter experts also to shine. You see, the power of giving that spotlight to that individual, it really makes a huge difference. It really helps them. It grows them. It really helps them in terms of them moving forward. Then there was a question asked by, I think it was Upule, relating to policy-related issues within the BMF. I guess there are many thoughts around this matter. That BMF is not very clear on policy issues. I guess because sometimes it's us as members. We get asked to serve on various structures. You must serve. In order for you to really push an agenda within BMF, you need to be active. You need to participate. You can't shout from outside the BMF and call the national office and say, yeah, there's such and such a thing happening. You need to join this movement. And also, I guess maybe the other learnings maybe from Pule is, I think we must learn to coordinate a little bit better than we currently are. And this notion, or rather the strategic objectives that Dr. Griselda believe in within BMF in terms of developing thought leadership and advocacy, somehow we've abandoned that. Because if we were developing thought leadership and advocacy, you will know you can't use data, you can't make statements without backing it with data. We need to make sure that we build and create a strong research capabilities. This notion that we want to be the clever blacks and use clever English, as President Bonang will always say, it's really going to expose us. We need to do proper research and really show that, you know, we are contributing to the body of knowledge, that we are here in terms of developing thought leadership and move conversation, just like many of these Mafikizolo organizations that I alluded to earlier on that are doing so well and even going to court and successfully winning. Now, it's not the end of the world. I think once we put ourselves together and coordinate and collaborate, you see, when elephants fight, the grass suffers.
It's the grass
and I think that's what is currently happening, Doctor.
And we also want to acknowledge BMF Gauteng Province Provincial Chair, and Dr. Sibongile Vilakazi. And just continuing to acknowledge some of the inputs that are made by the members. Mabu Reslepe says, I like what the leaders have said about BMF being a development organization. Please, let's create a safe space for all members to make mistakes and learn instead of making members feel intimidated, especially young professionals. Black Management Forum should be a safe space versus white corporates where the environment is usually hostile to Black managers. And if this is a known reality and fact, what are we going to do about it? Duncan Nisi says, Tasneem and Nick, how do we become deliberate and focused in identifying then changing the legislation that doesn't enhance the Black agenda? We tried to also do away with modern slavery in the retail space during the Maweni era, and we hit a dead end called not in line with the Constitution.
Yeah, Griselda, thank you. Yeah, I've noted. I also want to greet Dr. Eugenia. We've had many engagements with her. She is the transformational expert. So, I mean, those are the kind of people that we need to lean into as BMF. Exactly what Nick was saying. We have such a vast, plethora of educated, learned, specialized skill and knowledge and wisdom within our BMF membership. And I think, what I want to speak to you is also what Nick had said about quality versus quantity. You know, this rent-a-bust issue, I remember distinctly, and at the time I didn't quite understand it, because we talk about being an influencer, right? And we talk about having 1 million followers, and then you know, YouTube recognizes you and you get a plaque. But Jesus only had 12 disciples, Dr. Kananda, 12 people that he could rely on. Okay, 11, if we must be absolutely clear in the end. But quality of membership for me is going back to basics. It's really saying, if we need to convince people on what value they can get out of the BMF, then those are not members that we particularly, we don't want to be begging them to join the BMF. Okay. So when you buy into you're buying into an ideology, you're buying into a movement, exactly what Nick said, it's a movement. We want to move the compact, the social compact of transformation forward. Do you want to be part of this movement, or do you want to ask us what is in it for you? I want to talk about collaboration between our sister organizations. We've got BLA, you know, we've got BLA, we've got BCA, we've got ABASA, we've got ABSIP. How do we strengthen BMF? By reaching out to these organizations, professional organizations, and then strengthening, coming together and strengthening this compact of transformation. And really what it speaks to is unity of purpose. You know, we need to move together, accepting all our identities as Black people, to contribute, just like we worked together during the struggle for the liberation of South Africa. How are we going to move forward towards the struggle for the economic liberation of everyone? And then lastly, just to say on the point of, you know, the young professionals, mentorships are so vital. And as BMF members, and when we are over the age of 35, when we're more established, we perhaps in middle management or senior management, what are we giving back to the BMF? How do we give back to the BMF in a way that is meaningful, that doesn't cost us any money? And I would say you can easily do that through me. We've got a student chapter. So if each BMF manager takes a student at the university, in their province, in their branch, can you imagine if each one, you know, the each one teach one type of situation, we each take a student under our wing, we mentor them. That is making an impact, even if it's one person impacting one person. When you multiply that, it's going to be impactful on a large scale nationally. So I want to stop there and allow for other comments and questions, and obviously for Nick to say what he wants to say.
Linda Makoma says, indeed, Nick, data must inform our position in critical matters. Our opinion must be backed by facts, and Black organizations must invest in research. There is room to collaborate on this one, definitely. And Nkululeko Zondo says, I see BMF training and development of young leaders through YPDP, sponsors, etc. What's BMF's policy to retain such talent in order to grow Black Management Forum? In short, how do we grow the organization? Thank you. And there was also a concern. I just quickly want to go to that comment that was raised earlier on. I just want to acknowledge the name of the person who says advocating for leadership is BMF. Your response to this?
So let me try, well, first is let's tackle the de minimis question that one raised in terms of, I don't know what's advocating for BMF. One of the things that I'm finding in this session, it's a nice engaging session because many people are asking questions. You've got Nkululeko Zondo here asking questions about the BMF. He needs answers. Now, we've served in the BMF. We definitely can assist and have some of those answers. And many people are understanding what BMF stood for. You know, because sometimes you would have forgotten about that. So I think people should look at this session as more about that than anything else. But also, if one is quite familiar with your MOI or even the code of conduct, I believe there's something there. I think, Tasneem, as you've said, there's something there that talks about how BMF, as you said, in terms of campaigning, how BMF should campaign. There are values, there are guidelines that deal this. If I had time, I would definitely take that person through the verse and chapter on that one. Then Griselda, the issue that Ulinda Makoma is raising. Dr. Patrice Motsepe at the BMF event gave us money jointly with various other institutions and other Black organizations. It was purely meant to be set aside for research. I don't know whether this has been taken or anything has happened in terms of research. I guess we haven't taken that because I don't know. Maybe we're sometimes scared of doing this kind of research or partnering with institutions of higher learning. But what we tend to focus on is we want to do MBAs, the 2 days MBAs, and we realize we don't have deep skills, which many people are raising in this session. And I guess maybe to conclude with Nkululeko's the question is, Nkululeko, there's been many programs within BMF, programs that have been structured for young professionals, programs that even at some stage were structured for student chapters, programs that were structured for people who were trying to transition from corporate to become SMMEs. And that's why I think Tasneem has already alluded to mentorship is an important thing. Often when many people who have served and have an illustrious careers in corporate, they tend to exit BMF and they abandon their responsibility, that of you need to stay, you need to be around, and you need to help and make sure that you mentor and assist in terms of teaching the ropes for the new members, such as the YP, or as well in terms of the student chapters.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute. So, Nick, I don't want it to become a dialogue between us on what happened to the money from Dr. Motsepe.
No, you don't need to respond on that one.
Thank
don't
you.
respond on
Okay,
that one. But as I said, I was highlighting that there's always funding to do research. It's available.
Right. There is funding.
We've done it before.
There is funding. We've done it before. We're currently speaking to the European Union, the new Trade Commissioner, Roberto Secchuti. There's a dialogue facility, and you'll know that we undertook one with, I think it was led by Mangela. So Langa had initiated the first part, and we're now looking at doing the second part, and that dialogue facility, obviously the EU has money. So yes, research can be done. And I think perhaps we don't communicate often enough with our members or through their constituency. This doesn't trickle down for whatever reason. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that I agree with you. Research is an important component because it needs to be backed by empirical evidence. So as emotional as we want to get about BMF, we must get emotional, but it just adds to the emotion when we can back it by proven statistics and empirical evidence. And I think, this whole session is basically for me about going back to basics, going back to induction. If we must be describing in chapter and verse to people what the MOI says, because all that it's like the Bible, maybe not even the Bible. Let me not say the Bible because it's maybe more complicated and laid and not written in simple, plain language. But I mean, if you look at any piece of legislation, specifically your MOI, the constitution that Nick was flagging, and during his tenure, I mean, it was easy because he put it in a little book like this. We maybe need to go back and try and do that for members so that they can sleep with it next to their bed as if it is a Bible. So what we're asking our BMF members to do is a very basic thing, Dr. Kananda. We're asking them to read with understanding, which everybody at this level should be able to do.
The unfortunate reality is that with our education system, we unfortunately have many people who have passed but don't necessarily understand what they have studied. And this is South Africa's reality. And this, I can back it up with what many thought leaders are saying, that South Africa has a challenge of people who study to pass and not study to understand. And that's not a Griselda sentiment. Kaiser Koza, I'm just loving your inputs. He says, as a man and long-standing BMF member, I fully support a female president for 2021 and beyond. The time is now. As a true transformation agent, I truly believe there's no better time than now for us to be led by a woman. And having said that, I'd like to quote what former President Kgalema Motlanthe said, delivering a keynote address on the 8th of the 8th annual Lawton Ndlovu lecture. He said, open quote, having more women in leadership positions could set South Africa and indeed the world on a more sustainable path, close quote. And I still wonder, why are we still even, you saying that it's a BMF policy and this has been discussed, it's a done deal, and yet we still have people who just can't decipher that we are now, they see this as openly advocating for positions when we're just having a conversation. Are we perhaps touching people in their studios? I ask. I'm tempted to ask you, because nobody wants to ask you personal questions. I'm tempted to ask you that checks are coming to Sandton. How do you feel about that?
What's coming to Sandton?
Checks. Speeches were delivered. The manifesto was delivered yesterday.
Oh,
there's going to be checks built in Sandton.
Well, there's probably a couple of things. Two things is I'm a resident in Sandton, and two, and I'm a member of Sandton branch. Three, I also, this issue many years ago, when Minister Lindiwe Sisulu came into housing, long time ago, she was once in Tshwane, because we used to, within BMF, we used to make sure that Tshwane will focus on public sector related issues. And one of the things that she shared, they talked about the integrated kind of a spatial planning. And it was already alluded, probably more than 15 years ago, to say, where do you expect, the mama who works here when she needs to go home? She can't be that far. And this was a model that was borrowed from many countries. In England, they have that integrated sort of a planning where you really have to bring, the different, call it people from different economic status, so that it's easier. They need to coexist. That was an issue that it's within government. I don't think there's an issue at all. One, as a resident, and two, probably as a member of Sandton, I don't think there's an issue. It's long overdue. And I remember one person once raised, is it not going to erode, devalue the property market? You must always ask the basic fundamental questions. Go back to your values. If you don't want that mama or that dada who's going to be working in your garden to live nearby, and you are not even prepared to pay for their transportation, and when this government is trying to bring them closer and you're complaining about that, then one wonders about your character and about your value system.
One of those situations that pain me is when a restaurant closes at 10 p.m. and people just don't even care how employees get to their homes. And this is why we need those checks in Sandton, so that we can bring people closer to where they work and deal with some of these challenges that we continue to face. I guess I'm going to give you a minute each to just give us your closing comments, and then we'll have a closure of this gathering. I'll start with you, Tasneem. Ladies first.
That's a huge assumption, Dr. Kananda. How do you know that I'm a lady? I'm definitely a woman.
Okay, I can play to that.
Let me just, talk to the issue of shacks in Sandton quickly, 2 seconds. it's not like the people living in shacks or across the road from Sandton and Alexandra can't see these mansions anyway. And if we link it to the unrest that happened mainly in KZN and in Gauteng, we need to, this is the ticking time bomb that the BMF has been speaking about since I can remember entering the BMF, the issue of civil unrest because of this growing inequality, and why the BMF becomes relevant. Because if you're going to have this very rich versus very poor, we're talking about countries in Africa, there's no middle class. So you have an annihilation of a middle class that supports, I mean, if you don't have enough black middle class to support the growing masses of poor people, you're going to have issues of civil unrest. So spatial apartheid has never been fully addressed. I think we need to go back to a second CODESA, and we need to fix these things with a properly constituted mandate of all South Africans. So let me end that there. I just in closing want to say that I had once heard, and I think it was at a Joburg event where our founding president, Eric Mafuna, said that, and he had quoted the American novelist Lewis Sinclair very aptly. He says that, Lewis Sinclair says that the trouble with this country is that there are too many people, and this is not about South Africa, by the way, he just makes this quote. He says, the trouble with this country is that there are too many people going about saying, the trouble with this country is, and not doing anything about it. Mm-hmm. So I want to close off there by saying we should not become that kind of organization that says the problem with this BMF is, be this armchair activist, this warrior typist where we tweet, and we want to say things on chat groups, and it's not about suppressing free speech. People must say what they feel in a respectful way. I'm all about that. But let us not become those people who say the problem with the BMF is follows, but not do anything about it. So I'm gonna end off there.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
Probably take off where Tasneem has left is, I guess it comes back to the thing. I think those people who join BMF, make sure you're clear in terms of why you're joining BMF. You hopefully want to be part of that change. And I guess that's the important one. And where the BMF is seeking to go with this new era is to make sure that we take BMF to where BMF should be. And where should BMF be? BMF should have ethical leaders. BMF should have members that have got integrity. BMF should have members that are respected, that are honored outside. There was a type of a BMF leader that would step out. Everybody knew when you spoke, everybody knew that you are the ilk, you are from the school of the Eric Mafuna, you come from this BMF that everybody speaks fondly of for 45 years. And I guess that's the challenge for many people. How do we go back to that BMF as we move forward? Thank you very much, Dr. Griselda.
Thank you very much to both of you for a very insightful conversation. I hand it back now to Thobeka Hadebe to just give us closing comments, and just once again reminding all of us that as we celebrate 45 years of driving ethical leadership and meaningful transformation in South Africa, play your part. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Gananda, for being such an amazing host. Thank you, Ms. Tasneem Fredericks and Nicholas Maweni, for taking us on a bit of a journey of your personal leadership, especially within the BMF. As someone who is relatively new in the BMF, it was beneficial for me to kind of go back to basics and have a viewpoint of the direction that we want to go in. And certainly, I believe as members, we need to self-reflect in the transformation direction we want to go in, to take not just BMF, but leadership as a whole. Like, we really need to self-reflect on what's the transformation direction we want to go in. Thank you as well to all the attendees that have joined onto this call. I just have 2 announcements that I'd like to make, a request from head office. Please look out in your emails and in the WhatsApp group chats for upcoming events. Tomorrow, BMF Gauteng, in partnership with PwC, presents Corporate Governance Workshop at 2 p.m. lunchtime. And on the 7th of October, BMF, in partnership with the Directors Association, invites you to the Madam Chair program, helping our women members to fast track themselves to chairs of boards. Thank you once again to everyone. Have a good evening. Good night.